All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the year that was 1997. It's on the WrestleNet radio, and I'm here with Archie Mitchell.
What's up, everybody?
Nate's not with us this evening because he is in his bunker, an
Yep.
undisclosed location. But it's not his show anyway; it's my show. And what we're going to do tonight is we've been talking about the beginning of 1997. We got the Royal Rumble pay-per-view behind us, and now we're into uh, some WCW action, or technically NWO action.
That's right.
Um, it's one of the most infamous pay-per-views of all time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I will say this, going in, I was like, oh man, I don't really want to have to watch this, but I'm a professional, so I'm going to do it. And I was a little surprised, and I'll get to that in a minute.
There's like one really good match on the whole show.
But that's the thing. I there's actually more than one good match.
No, I said really good match. Like the only match that deserved to be on pay-per-view was this one match. The rest were just passable or good.
So what you guys need to understand is the build up to this is the NWO has basically won their own pay-per-view.
Right.
And it's the NWO. It's what Eric Bischoff envisioned when he started the NWO, and he envisioned that this pay-per-view was going to be a kickoff for the NWO being its own brand, and unfortunately, it did not work.
Right. He tried it with a Nitro a couple times too, to brand it NWO Nitro, and it just wasn't pulling the ratings it thought it was going to. They thought, well, okay, we'll do a pay-per-view, and the pay-per-view, as Aaron said, was a little lackluster. It left a lot on the table that could have kind of been done.
Yes. And like I said, when I watched it, I didn't go in. I was going in like, oh my God, I'm going to have to watch this. But then I said, no, I'm not going to go in just thinking it sucks, because even if something's good, I'm going to have that mindset of it's bad.
Right.
So for one, I think this thing was snake-bit because they decided to have the debut of the NWO pay-per-view in Cedar Rapids, which was a bad idea.
I agree. It should have been maybe Atlanta or, anywhere else.
Yeah, but Cedar Rapids, bad idea. It's the winter time, which whatever. And they did it on a Saturday, which people aren't used to pay-per-views at this time being on a Saturday. So I think that also hurt their buy rate, which at the end of the day, that's what shows the success of a show, especially a pay-per-view, is buy rate.
I agree. The one thing I will say that was really good about this show, Aaron, and I wasn't expecting it to be, the commentary of Ted DiBiase and Eric Bischoff. They actually do a really good job being two heel commentators.
I got some notes on that coming up. But the show opens with a very long opening segment of the NWO guys, except for Hulk Hogan, because I think Hulk Hogan saw this and was like, no way, brother. Because the NWO arrives to the building hanging on the back of garbage trucks.
Right.
Why are they on the back of the trucks? I don't understand, but Hulk Hogan was probably like, I'm not coming to the building on the back of a garbage truck.
Right. I'm coming in a limo, brother.
Yeah. Then the opening video plays, and then Eric Bischoff introduces Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan on three separate screens. And then they welcome people to the show. And actually, the set is pretty badass.
It is.
It's a very neat looking. The arena looks good. Like, if I'm Eric Bischoff and I'm looking at this, I'm probably in the same mindset he is. And I was like, I think this building looks like the tits. I think it's going to be successful.
Right.
Like I said, just a lot of bad decisions were made.
We're making $1 million, and there's a guy on his earphone going, Eric, we haven't even hit the 100,000 buy rate yet. Calm down.
which I didn't look up, so I don't know what the buy rate is for the pay-per-view.
I believe it was like 90 or 105,000 because I recently watched a review of the show about a month ago, and the guy, like you said, didn't want to go in bad. He felt, he'd look up things that were going to be pleasing, and he said that for a show of a company that was in its infancy, because the NWO was only a year old at the most, 100,000 buys is not horrible, but they were expecting it to do Starcade like buys when it wasn't going to do that.
Yeah. And then Eric obviously introduces Trillionaire Ted, because Ted DiBiase and Eric Bischoff are your commentators for the show.
Right.
And they banter back and forth. And then we roll into our opening match, which is Chris Jericho versus Masa My Hero Chono.
Yes.
It's a decent opener. Nothing really special happens in it.
Right.
They do a quasi-Japanese style match, but in America.
Very strong style, yes, I agree.
Yes. But at the end, Jericho cannot be successful, and Chono makes the NWO proud with the Mafia kick.
Tell the truth here. Jericho had him beat like 3 times, but Nick Patrick, being the referee, kept that from happening. So Jericho had a chance to win, but this is the NWO pay-per-view, so it's one-sided.
Yes. So yes, through chicanery from Nick Patrick, Chono is your victor with the Mafia kick. Like I said, decent opening match. Nothing to really write home about though, but they did their job. And this is back in the day when if you were the opener, you didn't go out and steal the show.
Well, true.
Now every single match is bang, 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 bang.
Right.
Back at this time, you build up your card. Right. Which honestly, Bischoff kind of did that when he started putting the cruiserweights out there first, but that is what it is.
Right.
Anything else on Chono Jericho?
I love the way that they introduced Chono into being in the NWO. He was with Sonny Ono.
Yeah.
Ono's like, I brought Masa Chono. I bring Muta. I bring all the Japanese wrestlers. And then Chono just turns around, opens up his jacket. He's got an NWO shirt on. He pushes Sonny Ono out of the way. And the thing I loved about this is that Bischoff ripped off the NWO from New Japan Pro Wrestling. So to have now an NWO in Japan was sort of like, okay, so we're just gonna give them what they already got. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it did reestablish in some way. Like Bischoff, that's one thing that Bischoff did that Vince never, like Vince would bring in international guys, but he'd make them like, he wouldn't even talk about them being whatever. Bischoff did do a good job at like acknowledging other international companies, and these guys are from Japan and these guys are from Mexico, and guess what, they have belts that they don't have, and it was cool at the time.
It also helped the lower carded NWO guys like Scott Norton, the NWO Sting, you know what I mean, to go to Japan and wrestle, and then they were coming back actually with a little bit of buzz behind them.
Yeah.
So it was,
and it was cool. And it was cool because this is 1997, so the internet wasn't. I mean, the internet was a thing, but it wasn't what it is now.
Right.
So these were guys that you would read about in like the magazines and shit, and I actually get to see them. So that was cool. Then Bischoff shows a bunch of fat chicks and is I don't know, it's not politically correct, but it is what it is. Shows a bunch of
what he said during the show. It's not like you saying anything different.
shows a bunch of ample females. and they are wanting to be Miss NWO. And this is the first thing that, in my opinion, starts to actually hurt the program itself.
I agree.
Is this Miss NWO contest thing. And it's pointless. It's Bischoff making himself laugh. And I don't mind it being like a segment.
But it was the whole show. It kept
the whole show. It's like, let's keep going to this guy that looks like Bruce Pritchard's kid. I don't even remember what his name was. and showing these fat chicks. And it just kind of was like, eh.
Right.
It was a thing that probably would have been funny.
Well, if it would have led to something too, like, okay, all night long, who's going to be Miss NWO? And then maybe if they would have revealed it to be Miss Elizabeth, because she was with them anyway, And that would have been the way that she finally joins the NWO as a real member, as opposed to being forced to be there. But, like you said, it was just these women who were not very attractive looking. Let's face it, they were not ugly, but they were meant to look like they were supposed to, like biker babes and like soccer moms and things like that. And if anything, it was hurting the show, like you said, and kind of humiliating these women too, because he was putting them through some kind of not so great task.
Yeah, so this, like I said, this is an ongoing thing, and I didn't even write down the rest except for the actual contest. I didn't really write any other notes about it because honestly, I skipped through a lot of it just because I was like, I'm not watching this. So the next match is a Mexican death match. That's what it is. It's booked as a Mexican death match between the Laughing Man Hugh Morris and Big Bubba Rogers.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Neither one of those gentlemen are Spanish.
Oh no, not at all.
Right. Why couldn't it have just been a death match?
I agree with you, and the reason, excuse me, the reason it was initially going to be a Mexican death match is because it was supposed to be Big Bubba versus Conan. Because that's what they were building up to. And from what I understand, Conan got hurt.
Right.
So we were like, well, let's keep going with the Dungeon of Doom thing because Bubba left the Dungeon of Doom to join the NWO.
Right.
That makes sense. But guess what? You don't have to still call it a Mexican death match.
Right. Right.
Call it a street fight. Call it anything.
I've never really understood what a death match really was. I mean, I know what death matches are nowadays, like with Nick Gage and, GCW but that's not what this match was. It wasn't like they were beating each other with light tubes and things. They just fought all around. Like you said, it was a street fight.
Yeah. And it was bad. And it kept to the rules of the original death match where you had to like answer the 10 count or whatever. Right. But it's just two guys. They're big guys, both talented guys. They're big men. But to me, Hugh Morris and Bubba Rogers do not mix.
No.
It was a pretty lackluster match.
Yes.
They attempted to do a gimmick with some handcuffs, but they broke the handcuffs. So that gimmick went away.
Right.
Which makes me wonder if what they did at the end wasn't initially what they were going to do.
Right.
Because now your handcuffs are broke. So I'm assuming they were going to do some deal where Hugh Morris got beat down, couldn't get back up because he was handcuffed.
Right.
So then you can't answer the 10 count. So instead, I'm assuming, call an audible, and Big Bubba Rogers runs over Hugh Morris with his motorcycle.
Classy.
And that is how the match ends. Very stupid. I'll say Hugh took a good bump.
Yes.
But I don't think that's how you would.
No,
I don't think that's how it would go if you got hit with a motorcycle.
I guess it could have been worse than being a Mexican death match. He could have fed him some really bad Mexican food, and he had to run to the toilet. I don't know, but I mean, it's just this is what the lower mid card of the NWO was. They really had nothing for them, so there was really no reason for an entire pay-per-view.
Yes, and like I said, Hugh, good bump. But he took a bump like you would take a bump if you were getting hit by a car,
right?
Not by a motorcycle. I don't think you would fly over the motorcycle if you got hit by it.
Right.
I think you'd just be under it. But that's just my opinion. And my opinion of the match was not good. It wasn't terrible. It just was not good. Anything else on that fiasco?
If it's not gonna look good on WCW Saturday night, don't put it on a pay-per-view. At least Jericho and Chono could have been on a Nitro if they didn't put them on pay-per-view. But this match wouldn't even have worked on a Saturday night or a main event. That's the way I look at it.
It was not. This was bad.
Yeah.
The middle of this show is terrible, man. Terrible. The next one up serves absolutely, positively no purpose whatsoever.
Is Michael Wall Street in it by any chance?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is,
of course.
It is Jeff Jarrett,
Mm-hmm.
who was never entertaining when he was in WCW.
No.
Especially when he was like face Jeff Jarrett.
And begging to be a member of the Four Horsemen, even though there were 4 already.
Yeah, and like I said, this period of Jeff Jarrett is actually the least entertaining Jeff Jarrett's ever been in his career. It's super boring. You don't know what his character is.
Right.
Like he's acting like a white meat baby face half the time, but then when he's involved with like the Four Horsemen, it's not. And
right,
it's all bad. He doesn't look like he could break an egg. His outfit is stupid.
Right.
That outfit works when you're double J Jeff Jarrett.
Right.
And you're supposed to be like outlandish and cocky and crazy, or what, I don't want to say crazy, but you know what I'm saying. Like when you're supposed to be this,
it's a part of the character. Now you have Jarrett, so why are you still in that character if you're not,
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, and I don't think I've ever said this before on any of our podcasts before. I was never really a huge Jeff Jarrett fan after he left GWF. You know what I mean? When he was younger. Him as Double J was not great for me. And then the whole, he really didn't sing the song. So then he went to WCW, and his first night in WCW, he's like, WWF screwed me and didn't put me over the right way. Okay, well, now let's do it in WCW. Nope. He wants to be a horseman. Then he goes back to the WWF. Now he's the NWA champion. It was just a whole clusterfuck with Jeff Jarrett, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like I said, Jeff was never a bad wrestler. Jeff wasn't like anything like that. But I'm not gonna say that I didn't like Jeff Jarrett, but I think part of the thing that hurt Jeff Jarrett was that Jeff Jarrett was a bigger fan of himself,
right?
Than what he actually was, if that makes sense. Like
he always thought he should have been a world champion.
Yeah, and it's like, no, Jeff, you shouldn't be a world champion. You should be right where they got you, and just be happy with it. But
be happy you're the Intercontinental or United States champion. You don't got to be the world champion, but
and God bless him. If you think if that's what you feel, you should be your biggest advocate. But I just think he should have.
And if you've got the Nolenthal and Dixie Carter's money, you can be a world heavyweight champion. Of course, Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, and he pulled it off and
multiple times.
Or become best friends with the guy writing the show.
Right.
But this match plods and takes forever. Michael Wall Street is a guy that I know he's a great wrestler and this, that, and the other thing. But the only time I enjoyed Mike Rotunda was when he was IRS.
I agree.
If he was anything other than IRS, I think Mike Rotunda was just boring as shit.
I agree.
And like I said, I'm not knocking the guy's wrestling ability, but he's very boring. And I don't even say that I'm not knocking his wrestling ability, but his wrestling style, he's a competent wrestler, but the style that he worked was boring too. And then just the man himself. And like I said, unless he had that IRS gimmick where he had
he was actually telling a story.
And something to cut promos on, he's fine. But when he was anything other than that, I don't have time for Mike Rotunda.
What I always wondered was he came back to WCW, and they named him VK Wall Street, Michael Wall Street. Obviously, he was the $1 Million Man. You know what I mean? He was trying to be Ted DiBiase. When you finally signed Ted DiBiase, why did he stay with the gimmick? You know what I mean?
They did change his name to Michael. And and he did that gimmick before when he was in WCW. Now when they brought him in, they called him,
No, when he was in WCW before, he was with the Varsity Club with Kevin
Sullivan
and Rick Steiner.
But after that, he was Michael Wall Street, and he was with Terry Runnels when she was Alexander York.
He was in the York Foundation for how long?
He was the beginning of the York Foundation, and then he left, and that's when they put Terry Taylor in it and made him the tailor-made man, because they didn't want to get rid of the gimmick,
right?
Of the group, but the man left, So they brought him back as Michael Wall Street, but they originally, do you remember what they originally called him?
When
they brought him in? Do you remember what they originally called him?
Wasn't it VK?
VK Wall Street.
Yeah.
Because they were implying that his name was Vincent Kennedy Wall Street.
Right.
Making fun of Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Right.
But
if you're going to do that, then have him act like Vince McMahon. You know what I mean? Give him mannerisms. You know what I mean?
I get it, but I'm just saying that's so I understand why they kept him Michael Wall Street, and it even makes sense that he's in the NWO.
Right.
Because DiBiase even mentions it on commentary when he's coming out. He's like, hey, here comes my guy. He's always with me. He's always there for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So Ted was the original money man. So it makes sense that he would be like, hey,
I get it.
And I'm not justifying Michael Wall Street being in the NWO.
Right.
I'm saying at least this character makes sense.
Well, look, we know what once they added Buff Bagwell, Scott Norton, and a few other guys, the NWO then started getting filled in with every 80s and 90s WWF throwaway.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to say is that the NWO did end up getting way too big.
Yes,
but
30 members strong.
Yeah, at this point, this was as big as it should have got, in my opinion. And you needed guys like Vincent. You needed guys like Michael Wall Street.
Right.
You needed guys like Buff. You needed guys like Norton.
Right.
Because you got to have the guys you send out there to get choke slammed and hit with the bat.
Right.
And you can't be sending Kevin Nash, Scott Hall.
No, because they're going to get injured.
And
you don't want to risk them, right?
Yeah, and even at this point, 6, you don't want to be sending these guys out there to keep getting choke slammed and shit. So you got to have people to keep throwing at people. So I understand that like any big group's going to have some flunkies. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I understand it, but
they were just adding anybody towards the ending.
Yeah.
Like, who wants to be in the NWO? You know?
Yeah. Which is funny because Jericho, did you ever hear Jericho talk about the NWO?
Oh, he hated it.
Well, he initially wanted to be in it.
Right.
He wanted to be in it. And Bischoff told him, no, your character doesn't work. And then when he turned heel and he started getting over, Bischoff went to him and said, hey, Jericho, I think it's time we bring in the NWO.
And he said no.
Jericho said, nope, I'm good.
Yep.
And Bischoff was like, what? And Jericho said he just didn't want to be a guy standing in the ring while Hulk Hogan's talking.
Right.
So he knew what would happen. He's like, I'm getting over because you're letting me talk finally. And now you want to put me in a position where I'm not going to get to talk anymore.
Right. Exactly.
But anyway.
Jarrett wins, I think, right?
Jarrett wins because Mongo ends up hitting Wall Street with the briefcase because Deborah wants him to.
Right.
Because Deborah is in love with Jeff Jarrett. And this match this match is pointless. It's pointless.
They just needed filler.
This was bad. This shouldn't have been nowhere near this show. It shouldn't have been on pay-per-view. It served no purpose.
Nope.
It was just dumb. Anything else on that?
No, I'm good with Jarrett and Wall Street.
All right, that match was so bad we had to talk about things that weren't even on this show.
Right.
The next match is a match that, even though it's not good, at least it's got a storyline. At least it serves a purpose. At least there's something going on with it because it's the match that's culminating of a breakup of a team. It's the American males versus each other. Buff Bagwell versus
Scotty
Riggs, who on the previous Nitro said that he was going to knock Buff on his duff. I'll never forget that.
Yep.
They have a basic one-on-one match. Nothing really spectacular happens in it. It's just two guys.
But it's not terrible. I mean, they actually have a decent matchup. I think they gave them like 12 minutes in the ring with each other, and, they actually have a passable match.
Yeah. I mean, it's basic, but nothing offensive happens in it. Nothing real bad. It's just a kind of a lackluster feud to a breakup of a team that nobody gave a shit about anyway.
Right.
And Buff ends up winning with his blockbuster. And I don't remember. I guess I'll find out coming. I guess we'll find out down the line. But I don't think they really do anything with these guys together after this. So I think this might be
No,
the
this was
blow
the
off
end of the feud. Thank God the American Males theme song gets retired after this because Scotty Riggs goes away for a little while.
Yeah.
We don't see him again until Raven debuts and brings him into the flock. And Buff goes on to being Buff Bagwell in the NWO.
So this thing's over. So that's good. Anything else on the American Males Explode?
I think Buff Bagwell, I'm not saying he was one of the greatest wrestlers, but I think he was a good middleman. And I think if anything, him and Norton should have got a run with the tag titles, because the outsiders weren't always the tag team champions. So when it could be Hall and Nash, it should have been Norton and Buff.
If anybody in the NWO was gonna have the tag belts, it would have been at this time. It would have been Scott Hall and Kevin Nash.
Well, yeah, no, at this time, but I'm saying like 6 months down the road when the Steiners beat them for it, and then Harlem Heat beats the Steiners, and now the Nasty Boys are in the mix. It would have been good to see Buff and Norton grab a hold of the gold one time, and then there's not dissension in the ranks of the NWO. It's more because, well, Scott Hall has to go away anyway because of his addictions. So, and Nash don't have a partner, so why not let another team hold the belts?
Yeah. And they were a good tag team.
Yeah.
It was actually that's what I'm going to say about Buff. I know I knock Buff a lot on here and other shows and things like that. Part of it's because of the guy that he is. I don't think he's a very good person.
Right. He loves his mama.
Yeah, but he also loves to drink and drive and do other bad things.
Right.
But Buff was much better when he was in a tag team.
Yes.
Like Buff is the guy that can be he's your okay. How do I want to say it? Like if I'm a wrestling promoter, I understand why I would want Buff Bagwell.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just like on an 8x10, he looks great.
Right.
Like, oh my God, look at this guy. He's young. He's good looking. He's got a good body to him. But in the ring, he was just
right. But if you had an experienced veteran who needed something to do, like for instance, the Patriot,
that's what I'm saying.
Bagwell. You got a young rookie who ain't really got nothing going on. 2 Gold Scorpio. Throw him with Bagwell. Hey, we got Scotty Riggs coming up from the power plant. What do you want to do? Put him with Bagwell. Make them look like Chippendale dancers. Okay, it worked.
Buff's good in a tag team setting when he's not the only guy in the
and they don't just give him the mic for no, because when he would get on the mic and start throwing those tangents like against Rick Steiner and Scotty's got the biggest arms in the world, it was like, okay, calm down, relax and let's move on, but it's Buff. What are you gonna do?
And he was also a guy that was kind of too high on himself too.
His mom thought he had his own dressing room, his own bus, his own,
Yeah. Did you ever hear about how Tony Schiavone said that he had heat with Buff?
No.
Yeah. And he said he didn't even know it until he saw bumped into him on an airplane and Buff was like shitty to him or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "What's that all about, Buff?" And he goes, "You called me a flunky." And Tony was like, "Excuse me?" He goes, "It was when he was with Scott Steiner, and he said that he was coming at Scott Steiner and Buff Bagwell were coming out, and Tony Schiavone was like, 'Oh, here comes Scotty Steiner with his flunky Buff Bagwell.'"
Well, that was obviously a part of the script. I mean, if you said it during a show.
Yeah, and Schiavone's like, he was like, nobody wrote it for me or anything, but he was like, that's the character you're playing.
Right.
Like, you're playing the character that's hanging on to Scott Steiner because he's got the biggest fucking arms in the world.
Right.
He's a badass, and when you're around him, ain't nobody gonna beat your ass up.
Right.
You're his flunky.
Right.
And Buff was like butthurt because Schiavone called him a flunky on TV.
Well,
Schiavone was just like, fuck it, whatever.
Hey, it happens. It happens.
You are what you are, buddy, and you're Scott Steiner's flunky.
Could have been worse. You could have ended up being 2 Gold Scorpios flunky.
Yeah, but like we said, Buff ends up winning that match.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, wasn't bad, wasn't great, was just there.
Right.
And anything would have looked better. Anything would have looked good following the Jeff Jarrett Michael Wall Street match.
Right.
So,
Of course.
the next one is a guy that I've always liked, even like I just like the guy. And as long as the Heroes and Legends convention still goes on, I don't know what COVID will bring us by October, but as long as that still happens, I will be paying this man to get my picture taken and his autograph. It's Flash Scott Norton versus Diamond Dallas Page.
And Scott Norton, to his credit, was a legit badass who actually made his matches look real. You know,
part of it was because style. He was really hitting fuckers. Like,
well, yeah, but I mean, he took care of people too. I don't recall there ever being an instance where somebody said Scott Norton injured somebody.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So he took care of his people, but he still had that strong style Japanese upbringing where he made it look like he was whipping somebody's ass.
Yeah, so. And he's also one of those guys that, from everything I've ever heard, even though he was like one of those guys that didn't have to bully people in the locker room.
Right.
Like he was only like, I'll fuck with you if you fuck with me.
Right.
Everybody knew the guy was a badass, so nobody fucked with him.
He had his respect.
Yeah. And he wasn't like
no.
Scott Steiner was let's just say it. Scott Steiner was a fucking
bully. Yeah.
And part of me thinks it's because Scott probably didn't always think he could, like, you always hear about like Scott Steiner, like I don't know if he did it, but like say Scott Steiner is bullying Scotty Riggs.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you never hear about Scott Steiner. Oh, Scott Steiner was in there bullying around Scott Norton or Haku. No. You know what I mean? Because it's like, those guys are legitimate badasses.
Right.
And Scott only fucked with like the people that he knew were gonna not be able to defend themselves. Right. Same way with Scott Hall. Scott Hall's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Okay.
Right.
But him and Kevin Nash would fuck with people in the ring. And
they would rip people all day long.
But every time they were in there with the fucking Faces of Fear, man, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. Exactly when they were supposed to do it. They didn't make them look stupid because they knew you don't fuck with these guys. Because it's like Haku ate a man's face. You know what I mean?
Right.
Don't fuck with that guy.
It wasn't so much Barbarian as much as it was Haku. Yeah, Barbarian might have been like, oh, okay, they're potatoing me again. But Ming might have Haku might have walked backstage and be like, what the fuck was that about?
But Barbarian could handle his shit.
Oh, yeah. But I'm saying everybody knew from Haku's, background what he was capable of. Barbarian was kind of just waiting to explode.
Yeah. I saw him at a convention and I regretted not getting it, but he was there with Warlord and he was just sitting at the table. And I told Nate, I was like, that guy's just sitting at the table. He was just minding his own business. Mm-hmm. Like guys would come by and he'd shake hands with him and stuff like that. They'd give him a little hug or whatever. And you could tell he was happy to see everybody there. But I told Nate, I was like, that guy's just sitting there, and he is one of the most intimidating people I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
Like, he is like, Warlord was still a big dude,
Right.
But Barbarian was just intimidating looking. Like, I was like, that guy, like, if he would walk into a bar, I'd be like, that's a guy that nobody in here wants to fuck with.
Right.
But getting off the point, Scott Norton's in there with DDP. People know my opinion on DDP, so we won't get too much into it. I understand why people like him. I'm not a huge fan. But this one ends in a count out because the NWO run out. And this was actually pretty kind of believable because the NWO runs out and Page gets a couple of them, but then the other ones shuffle in. And his character's like, yeah, there's too many of them.
Right.
And he bounces and he runs away. And that's how this one ends.
And there was a storyline to this too, because Paige was offered an NWO shirt like 5 times.
Yeah.
He politely said no the first 4 times. On the 5th time, he took it, and then Diamond Cuttered Scott Hall, tripped up Kevin Nash, and ran away. So
Yeah.
Hall was the anti-NWO. DDP was the anti-NWO here, and they thought Scott Norton was just going to whip his ass and, get revenge.
Yeah. So like I said, this and it was what and they did the shirt gimmick again,
right
in here, and then they're like, oh, he got us again, that son of a bitch, or whatever.
Yep.
So I mean, like I said, it was a match for the crowd. That's what this match was. Which honestly, I don't think I'll talk about it in a minute. But anything else on that match?
Again, at least it had a storyline. There was a purpose to DDP fighting Scott Norton.
Yeah. The next match on the show is actually a pretty good match. Because it's 4 guys that can actually, I don't say work because Kevin Nash is in there, but it's 4 guys that know what they're doing, know how to tell a story in the ring, and it's the first match where everybody in the ring looks like a star. And it is the Steiner brothers versus the Outsiders for the WCW NWO Tag Team Championships. You got anything on this before I go? I lost you.
Yep. And the storyline here is that the Steiners kept getting screwed out of the belts, and they wanted a better referee, but they got Patrick because he was the referee for the whole show. But then something happens along the lines of in the middle of the match. I think it was a good match, though. Like you said, 4 guys who know how to work, for guys who know each other very well. Aaron, can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can.
All right, cool.
I can hear myself too, but I'll try to avoid that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I got the gist of what you were saying about how they were, how the Steiners kept getting screwed out of the belts and Patrick was against them and everything like that. And in this one, Patrick ends up getting bumped and the match goes on for a little bit longer. The Steiners end up getting the 1, 2, 3 and winning the belts because Lee Anderson runs in and makes the 1, 2, 3. And the story of the match at this end is that Eric Bischoff is saying that he's going to go to the board of directors and he's going to get this shit fixed because Pee Wee Anderson shouldn't even have been there to begin with.
Right, and that's what I think I really liked about this match. Give me 1 second here.
Okay.
We're having a audio problem. Right, and that's what I think liked about this this match. Give me 1 second here. We're having a audio problem. Aaron, are you able to hear me?
It's very
Testing.
cutting in and out, man.
Cutting in and out. All right, hold on. Testing. Still no good?
That's better.
All right, give me 1 second. All right, go ahead. Where were we again?
We were just at the end of the Steiner Brothers match where it ended with. I'm hearing a lot of myself on your end.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Aaron.
Just we were at the end of that match with Nick Patrick getting bumped. Randy Anderson coming in making the 1-2-3, and Eric Bischoff saying that he was gonna come back to that later tomorrow or Monday. He's gonna get in the offices in Atlanta and get those belts back off of the Steiner Brothers. Excuse me, and back onto the Outsiders. So we'll see where we come from that. I mean, I know where we're going from that, but we'll talk about it on our next episode. Anything else on the Steiner Brothers Outsiders match?
I just like the way that they used Randy Anderson, and I like the way that they told the story here that the Steiners were the champions, but we weren't quite sure.
Yeah. Almost using the pay-per-view as a lead-in to Nitro, which should be the other way around, but whatever. The next match is Eddie Guerrero versus Six, and it is the match Archie was saying was, I'm assuming you're thinking this was the one really, really great match on the show. I'm assuming this is the one you meant, right? And not Jarrett.
No, I meant VK Wall Street versus who did he Cleveland fight again?
Huh? It was VK and Jeff Jarrett, but that's not the match we're talking about. It's this match right here. If you're going to watch this show, it's the match to go out of your way to watch. If you're going to find one thing on this show to watch, this is the thing to watch. It's Eddie Guerrero versus Six. Eddie Guerrero's coming out. The NWO voice calls him the Mexican jumping bean, Eddie Guerrero. Probably wouldn't say that in this day and age, but 97, who gave a shit? There's something that they do in this match that I really enjoyed, and it brought me back to a day gone by. And you know what it is?
What's that?
It's the fact that even though it's a ladder match, it goes 10 minutes before anybody even goes for the ladder. Nowadays, the bell rings and everybody automatically just goes and grabs a ladder. Now, in this time, it made sense because the ladder, for one, isn't in the ring right away or isn't even at ringside. It's down the aisle. And logically, you'd want to beat the guy up before you wanted to try to climb the ladder. You know what I mean? So these guys are basically having a
I
match.
agree 100%.
They're basically having a wrestling match before they start with their ladder match. And even when they do get the ladder in there, the ladder's not the complete focal point of the match. It's two guys battling, and there's a ladder in there, but it's not, everything isn't based off jumping off the ladder, falling off the ladder, falling through things, because eventually when they do get up on top of the ladder and they do bump off the ladder and everything, it means more because they didn't see it in the first 15 seconds of the match. You know what I mean?
Definitely. This was a different type of ladder match than we have nowadays.
And like I said, this was more of a wrestling match with a ladder in it than a ladder match, or than a ladder match with a little bit of wrestling in it. And if you want to see how to put together a ladder match, I'm not saying this is Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon, or even Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, when they had theirs in, I think, 93, but it's really, really good. And I think you guys should go out of your way to watch it. The ending is both of them are up on the ladder. They both grab the belt. They point out that there can't be a winner till somebody has 100% control or possession, however you want to say it, of the belt, which Eddie gets because he smacks X-Pac. He smacks Six with it. Six falls off the ladder, and Eddie Guerrero is your reigning, and he's still your because he was the United States champion going in. X-Pac had just stole the belt. So Eddie is still your champion, and the fans lost their shit. This was really good.
Yeah, but then the following night or a week later on Nitro, Six steals the belt again. So poor Eddie didn't even get to hold the United States title while he was champion.
Yeah. But like I said, it's a good thing, and I'd watch these guys wrestle all the time if I could. Really good together. Like I said, if you're going to go and watch something on this show, you're like, I'm only going to watch one thing on this entire pay-per-view. This is the thing you want to watch. Anything else on this one?
No, good, solid middle of the card match, and I agree with you. This was the match I was looking forward to.
Yes. So then after this, we get the culmination of the Miss NWO contest. They bring them all out. There's one like passable looking chick in there. She's some blonde chick that maybe after you had 6 of them at a bar, you might be like, I'll try that one, you know. But other than that, it's a bunch of like, basically I wrote down, this looks like the roster of a 1980s women's wrestling promotion. There's a lot of bigger gals. There's a lot of skinny chicks with mullets. It's pretty bad. The MC of the Miss NWO contest, like I said, I think his name was like Mike Kurtz or something like that. I don't remember what his fucking name was. He says the fans don't get to pick. Eric Bischoff gets to pick, and Eric Bischoff picks one of the ample ones and gives her a kiss. And as he gives her a kiss, fireworks explode. Like literal pyro goes off when Eric Bischoff kisses the fat chick. And that actually kind of made me laugh. Like I was like, that's kind of funny. But other than that, this whole Miss NWO thing, I think it's just one of the worst things I've ever seen on a wrestling show. It's just bad.
It was a reverse diva search, and it was not needed on this pay-per-view.
It shouldn't be on anything. And like I said, this was... I just thought of it. You know how like people say Vince McMahon has the things that he thinks is funny, and it's like he puts his sense of humor on things, like he likes shit jokes and things like that. And he'll put it on his show, whether he thinks anybody else is going to think it's funny or not, because it makes him laugh. This was Bischoff. Bischoff thought this was funny, so he put it on his show, and it was bad.
All it did was guarantee he wasn't going to have another pay-per-view.
Yeah. So this sucked, and I think just it hurt the pacing of the show and killed the crowd, and I just didn't like it at all. So less said about it, the better. The next match is our main event. It is Hollywood Hulk Hogan defending the WCW Championship against the Giant. And I will say this, Hogan actually had a pretty cool entrance. I liked it. He looked like a star. The pyro.
His entrance was great.
He had some Dallas Cowboys with him. I don't know anything about football, but I'm assuming at the time these guys were like major stars in the NFL. And he also had Vincent with him, but that is what it is. But the entrance itself, I think
the reason for the Dallas Cowboys being there is because they were in Cedar Rapids, and I think there was like a joke there. I don't know why. I just was the way it was.
I don't know either, but Giant had wrist tape, like black wrist tape, which was weird. I've never seen him do that before, but that's just a little side note. And I know you're talking about how the commentary was good and everything, and I understand like Eric Bischoff talking up Hogan and everything like that, but him being Bischoff, pronouns, pal, whatever, verbally blowing Hulk Hogan got a little too much on this, in my opinion. Like, I don't know. It was annoying. It became more annoying than it was like he's putting over Hogan. It was bad. He was landed on a little too thick on this show, in my opinion.
I agree with you on that. It was his way of, I guess, kind of like poking fun at Vince McMahon, who at the same time was doing this to Shawn Michaels,
Yeah.
But it was bad all around.
Giant ends up choke slamming Hogan, has him beat. But once again, Dick Patrick, he's counting 2 counts and saying Hogan has his elbows or getting his shoulders off the mat, which he never did. And then the NWO run in and he choke slams them. But then Hogan ends up hitting Giant with an acoustic guitar for some reason that was just there. And there is no finish to the main event of the pay-per-view. They don't even say he's disqualified. They don't say the match was this, that. They announce nothing. It just ends with Hogan and the NWO spray painting Giant, and that's how it goes off the air.
The thing about it was, you're right, there's no ending. And it was like you built this up. You kicked the Giant out of the NWO after he got beat by Hogan and then joined the NWO. And so basically it was a big middle finger to World War III, which was your big pay-per-view before this, and it was bad.
Yeah, they ended this pay-per-view like you would end a Nitro, and it was a bad idea. So my final thoughts on the show, the pay-per-view itself looked awesome, and what they did in the ring, the big stuff the crowd reacted to and they were into. Match-wise, it wasn't as bad as I remember, because I was just looking at the quality of it. We lost Archie, so I'll just put my final thoughts on it. And the announce team was not that great, in my opinion. I've always hated Eric Bischoff as a commentator, and as talented as Ted was and everything that he did, even when he was in WWF, I don't think Ted was a very good commentator. So that's what I was going to say, that I don't think
I agree with you. It was his way of, I guess, kind of like poking fun at Vince McMahon, who at the same time was doing this to Shawn Michaels. But it was bad all around.
And then, unless you got anything about the meat of the pay-per-view itself, I'll go into best match, worst match, which is pretty obvious. Oh, wow, that's really lagging.
The thing about it was there's no ending. And it was like you built this up, you kicked the Giant out of the NWO after he got beat by Hogan and then joined the NWO. And so it was a big middle finger to World War III, which was your big pay-per-view before this, and it was bad.
All right. We got a lot of lag going on, but they were into.
I'm here.
All right. Like I said, the best match of the show was obviously Six and Eddie Guerrero, and the worst match award goes to Jeff Jarrett and
I'm here.
Michael Waltrip. And that is the NWO sold out experiment, and it failed.
No,
So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this edition of the year that was 1997 sold out edition. We'd like you guys to keep on listening. Listen to all the shows that we have on the podcast network, like obviously the We Can't Wrestle, Archie's show, David Gold's show, Nate's Slice of Time show, all kinds of stuff on the WrestleNet radio. Always listen to the Anchor, which is the We Can't Wrestle podcast, and my personal, I shouldn't say favorite, but my first contribution idea to the We Can't Wrestle network, which is reliving the Extreme with myself, Nate, and Chad every week, reliving ECW. That's my baby, so that's why I'm going to put that one up there last. So I want to thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you giving us your time, giving us about an hour of your life. I appreciate that. And Archie, do you have anything else? So, all right. I know Nate said he wanted to do minimal edits, but there's going to have to be a lot of edits to this. So, once again, thank you guys. Thank you, Archie. I appreciate it. And keep on listening, guys. I appreciate it.